Sarah woke up to the taste of blood in her mouth. Not metaphorically. She could actually feel it, iron and salt on her tongue, the coppery remnants of something violent that had happened while she was unconscious. Her eyes snapped open to a ceiling she'd never seen before, all cream-coloured and pristine with recessed lighting that whispered of wealth she'd never possessed. The room smelled like expensive cologne and fresh linen. Her heart began hammering against her ribs with the force of a wild animal trying to break free from a cage. She tried to move, and that's when the real terror began. Her left wrist was attached to the bed frame with a silk scarf. Not tight enough to cut off circulation, but tight enough to make it absolutely clear that movement was not permitted. Sarah's breathing became shallow, panicked, as she jerked against the fabric. The scarf didn't budge. Of course it didn't. Nothing in this nightmare was going to be easy. "Don't struggle," a voice said from the darkness. A man's voice, deep, Korean accent, terrifyingly calm. "You'll only hurt yourself, and I've already caused you enough pain for one night." A figure emerged from the shadows, impossibly tall, impossibly beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that looked like they'd seen things no human should ever see. A tailored black suit that probably cost more than a car. And as he stepped into the light, Sarah could see blood on his knuckles. Fresh blood. "Who are you?" she gasped, her voice breaking. "What happened? Why am I? Why can't I move? What did you do to me?" "My name is Kang Min-jun," he said, sitting down on the edge of the bed like they were old friends having a casual conversation. "And what I did to you is something your father should have told you about weeks ago. But apparently he thought it would be better to let you find out the hard way." He reached toward her face and Sarah flinched violently, but his hand was gentle as he brushed her hair away from her forehead. "You have a small cut here. Nothing serious. You hit your head when you tried to run from me about 3 hours ago." "I tried to run from you?" Sarah heard her own voice sounding distant and strange. I don't remember that. I don't remember anything. What did you do to me? Did you drug me?" "The cocktail your father gave you at dinner was laced with a sedative," Min-jun explained, with the tone of someone describing a simple business transaction. "He wanted to make sure you'd be compliant during the ceremony. Unfortunately, the dosage was miscalculated, and you woke up mid-procedure. You panicked. You tried to run. You made it as far as the hallway before I caught you." He held up his bloody knuckles as evidence. "You fought harder than I expected. That's actually impressive. Most women would have given up immediately." "Ceremony?" Sarah whispered. "What ceremony?" "Our wedding ceremony," Min-jun said simply, "which, I'm sorry to inform you, is already legally binding. The paperwork has been signed. The government registration is complete. As of approximately 2 hours ago, you are Mrs. Kang Min-jun, wife to the heir of Seoul's most powerful criminal organization, and your life as you knew it is officially over." The room began to spin. Sarah felt like she was falling even though she was lying perfectly still on the bed. No, that's impossible. My father would never, he wouldn't just, you can't just marry someone without their consent. There are laws. There's the law against human trafficking, against kidnapping, against... "Against what?" Min-jun interrupted, his voice still maddeningly calm. "Against what crimes do you think we commit?" "Sarah, my family doesn't operate within the law. The law operates within our family. The judges, the police, the government officials, they all answer to us one way or another. Some because they're terrified of what will happen if they don't. Some because they've been paid enough money to look the other way. And some because they have family members whose safety depends on their cooperation." He leaned closer, and Sarah could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive that made her stomach turn. "Your marriage is completely legal because we made it legal. The only person in Seoul who could challenge it is your father, and I have a feeling he won't be doing that, given that his company's problems have just been solved by our agreement. Agreement? Sarah's voice was getting higher, more hysterical. What agreement? I didn't agree to anything. I don't even know you. You can't just... He sold you, Minjun said, and his voice finally shifted into something harder. Your father came to me 6 months ago and told me he was in financial ruin. His company was hemorrhaging money. Creditors were about to seize his assets. He was going to lose everything, so he called me, because he knows what I am, what my family is, and what we're capable of. Minjun stood up and walked to the window, pulling back curtains to reveal Seoul, sprawling beneath them in all its glittering, neon-soaked glory. They were so high up that the city looked like something from a movie. He said, "I'll give you anything if you can help me." Anything at all. So I told him exactly what I wanted. You. In marriage. Legally binding. Permanent. Sarah felt bile rising in her throat. Her own father, the man who had raised her, who she'd trusted with her entire life, had literally auctioned her off like property. The realization was so overwhelming that for a moment she couldn't breathe. Your father accepted immediately, Minjun continued, his back still to her as he gazed out at the city. There was no hesitation. No negotiation. He simply said yes, and then he helped us set this up. He came to dinner with you tonight and slipped the sedative into your drink himself. He watched you get drowsy. He smiled and said goodnight. And then he left you here with me. This is a nightmare, Sarah whispered. I'm going to wake up and this will all be a nightmare. You're not going to wake up, Minjun said, turning back to face her. This is your reality now, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start figuring out how to survive it. He moved to the door. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow my mother arrives, and she's going to want to meet the woman who's married to her son. I suggest you look presentable. After he left, Sarah lay in the darkness, her wrist still bound by the silk scarf, and she cried. She cried for the life that had been stolen from her. She cried for the father who had betrayed her. She cried for the person she'd been just hours ago, when the worst problem in her world was whether she'd get that promotion at work. When she finally exhausted herself, she fell into an uneasy sleep filled with nightmares worse than the reality surrounding her. Morning arrived with brutal efficiency. A woman in her 50s entered the bedroom with cold professionalism, untied Sarah's wrist without a word, and left a note on the bedside table. Shower. Dress. Be ready by 9 a.m. We have a visitor. Sarah moved like a robot, her mind still trying to process the impossibility of everything. The clothes laid out for her were designer pieces. A cream-coloured dress that fit perfectly, shoes from an Italian brand, a Hermès scarf. They knew her measurements exactly. Of course they did. She realised with sickening clarity that they'd been planning this for months. She'd been observed, studied, catalogued like a specimen in a lab. At exactly 9 a.m, Minjun knocked on the bedroom door. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, perfectly tailored suit, not a hair out of place, and that same infuriating calm in his eyes. Come, he said. My mother doesn't like to be kept waiting, and if you make a bad first impression, the consequences will be unfavourable. The penthouse living room was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made the view of Seoul seem like it was invading the space itself. And there, standing by the window like she owned not just the penthouse, but the entire city below it, was a woman who radiated pure power. She was in her early 70s, with silver hair styled in an elegant chignon, and she wore traditional Korean dress, a hanbok in deep burgundy with gold embroidery. Her face was beautiful in the way that statues are beautiful, perfect, cold, and absolutely terrifying. When her eyes landed on Sarah, it felt like being X-rayed by someone who could see every weakness, every fear, every possible vulnerability. So this is the girl your father sold you to, the woman said in perfect English, though her accent was thick as honey. She was Kang Hai-won, Min Jun's mother, and she was everything Sarah had feared about powerful women in organized crime, elegant, composed, and utterly lethal. "You're younger than I expected. Prettier too. That could work in your favor or it could destroy you. We'll see which." "I don't want to be here," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I don't know what agreement you people made with my father, but I didn't agree to any of this. I want to go home. I want to call my family. What you want is irrelevant," Hai-won interrupted, moving closer. "You are no longer a person with wants, Sarah. You are an asset, a strategic advantage, a chess piece that your father moved into position so that he could save his own skin. The question now is not what you want. The question is, will you be valuable or will you be a burden?" "And if I'm a burden?" Sarah asked. Haewon smiled, and it was the most frightening thing Sarah had seen yet because there was no malice in it, just cold calculation. "Then you disappear. Journalists who've asked too many questions about my family have disappeared. Business rivals who refuse to cooperate have had tragic accidents. People who became problems have simply ceased to exist." She sat down on an expensive-looking sofa and gestured for Sarah to sit across from her. "But I don't think you'll be a burden. I think you're going to surprise us all. My son sees something in you. He told me about how you fought him last night, even while sedated, even while terrified. That takes spirit. And spirit, Sarah, is something that can be cultivated into power." "I don't want power," Sarah said. "Neither did I," Hai-won replied, "but I got it anyway. Now, there are some things you need to understand about your new life. First, you will never attempt to leave this penthouse without explicit permission. Second, you will learn Korean. I will not have a daughter-in-law who cannot speak to her own family. Third, you will study our business, our history, our way of conducting affairs. And fourth, you will accept that your old life is dead. The person you were before today no longer exists." "And if I refuse?" Sarah asked. "Then your mother dies," Hai-won said casually, checking her nails. "Car accident next week. Then your best friend has an overdose. Then your office colleagues start having mysterious illnesses. We have the resources to make your entire world collapse, Sarah. We have the resources to ensure that everyone you've ever cared about suffers unimaginably. So I suggest you don't refuse. I suggest you accept your new reality and figure out how to thrive in it, because the alternative is far worse than anything you can possibly imagine." Sarah felt all the fight drain out of her. The realization crashed over her like a tsunami. She wasn't just trapped. She was trapped permanently, and any resistance would result in the deaths of everyone she loved. Over the next 3 days, Sarah's entire world was systematized. Tutors arrived to teach her Korean. Consultants came to advise her on fashion and etiquette. She was given access to the penthouse, but nowhere else. She learned that the building had security cameras in every room except the bathroom and the bedroom. She learned that her phone had been replaced with a device that could only call numbers on a whitelist. She learned that the staff who worked in the penthouse were all connected to Minjun's organization and reported everything she did, said, and even thought to their superiors. But most importantly, she learned about Minjun. Late at night, he would appear in the living room where she studied Korean, and he would tell her stories about his family's business. He told her about the gambling operations that ran entire casino floors without the government's official knowledge. He told her about the loan sharking network that kept half of Seoul's entrepreneurs operating on the family's money and therefore at the family's mercy. He told her about the real estate empire that laundered millions of dollars every single day. And he told her about the murders, not bragging about them, simply stating them as facts. That businessman who refused to cooperate with us? Car accident. That journalist who was getting too close to our operations? Suicide, officially. That rival organization member who tried to move into our territory? Still missing. It's been 5 years. Each story chilled Sarah to her core, but she continued to listen. She continued to learn. She continued to study because she was beginning to understand something crucial. Information was power in this world, and if she was going to survive, if she was going to protect her mother and her friends, she needed to become powerful. On the 10th day of her captivity, Min-jun found her in the library studying Korean business law. "You're learning quickly," he said, and there was something almost like approval in his voice. Most people would be catatonic by now. Most people would be plotting ways to escape that would get them killed. But you're adapting, you're studying, you're becoming something. "I'm becoming a prisoner who understands her prison," Sarah said without looking up from her book. "That's not adapting. That's surviving." "It's the same thing," Min-jun replied. He sat down across from her, and for the first time she noticed that he looked tired, genuinely tired, like the weight of his family's empire was beginning to show on his face. "My mother wants to accelerate your integration into the family business. She thinks you have the intelligence to be useful beyond just being a trophy wife. She's proposing that you start learning the actual operations, the accounting, the logistics, the strategy." "Why would she do that?" Sarah asked suspiciously. "Because," Min-jun said, leaning back in his chair, "she's testing you. If you prove yourself capable and loyal, you become an asset to the organization. If you prove yourself to be a security risk or untrustworthy, you disappear. It's that simple." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she closed her book. "And what do you think?" "Do you think I'll prove myself loyal?" Min-jun studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. For the first time, she saw something vulnerable in him. Something almost human. "I think," he said slowly, "that you have no choice but to prove yourself loyal. Your mother's life depends on it. Your friends' lives depend on it. Everyone you've ever loved depends on you playing this game perfectly. So the question isn't whether you'll be loyal, Sarah. The question is whether you can be loyal without it destroying you from the inside out. If you're watching this and you're as invested in Sarah's story as we are, you need to like this video right now and subscribe, because what happens next is going to absolutely blow your mind. The choices Sarah makes in the next 72 hours will determine whether she survives this nightmare or becomes another name on a list of people who disappeared. So hit that like button, subscribe to see what unfolds, and don't you dare look away, because the plot twist that's about to happen is going to change everything. By day 30, Sarah had transitioned from prisoner to protégé. She sat in meetings with Min-jun and members of the organization, watching how decisions were made, how money flowed, how violence was dispensed with surgical precision. She began to understand that the Kang organization wasn't just a crime family. It was a complex, sophisticated empire with thousands of people dependent on its operations. She also began to notice something else. The organization was vulnerable. Not obviously, not in any way that outsiders could exploit, but vulnerable nonetheless. There were inefficiencies in the accounting systems. There were rivalries between different divisions that were being poorly managed. There were decisions being made based on emotion rather than logic. "You see it, don't you?" Min-jun asked one night as they stood on the balcony overlooking Seoul. "The cracks in the foundation?" "You let me see them," Sarah said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," he admitted. "I did. Because I'm beginning to think my mother was right about you. I'm beginning to think you might be something extraordinary, something we've never had before, someone from outside the organization who has nothing to lose by telling us the truth about how we're actually operating." "And what if I use that knowledge to destroy you?" Sarah asked. "Then you'll also destroy your mother, your friends, and your entire family," Min-jun replied coldly. "So, I guess it depends on how much you've changed since you arrived here 30 days ago. I guess it depends on whether Sarah Chen, the woman who existed before the wedding, still exists at all, or if there's someone new inside that skin now, someone more ruthless, Someone capable of accepting that survival requires choices you never thought you'd have to make. Sarah turned to look at him, and she saw for the first time that she understood him. That she understood all of them. They were monsters, yes, but they were monsters with logic, with structure, with a kind of twisted morality that made sense once you'd been inside their world long enough. "I'm not the same person I was 30 days ago," Sarah said quietly. "That person is dead. And the person I'm becoming, she's not going to let you destroy her. She's not going to let you destroy her mother or her friends either. She's going to become so valuable to this organization that the thought of harming her or anyone she cares about becomes worse than death." Minjun smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't the smile of a predator looking at prey. It was the smile of someone who'd finally found an equal. "Welcome to the Kang family, Sarah," he said. "Welcome to the game. Welcome to a world where loyalty is everything and betrayal is death. The question now is, how long will you survive it? And more importantly, how long will the rest of us survive you?" Sarah looked out at Seoul, at the city that had become both her prison and her kingdom, and she realized that she didn't know the answer. She didn't know what she was capable of. She didn't know how far she would go or what she would do to protect herself and the people she loved. But she was going to find out, and Seoul, the beautiful neon city sprawling beneath her feet, had no idea what was about to hit it. Because somewhere in the darkness of the Kang organization, a new force had emerged. A woman who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. A woman who had been forged in the fires of impossible choices and was about to reshape the entire landscape of organized crime in Korea. The game was no longer just beginning. The game was about to be completely rewritten,